Hi everyone, my name's Anne Andrews and I'm an ex-franchisor and I work very much in the franchise coaching arena, and I just thought I would put something online so that other people, the other franchisors can look at the process that I use and compare it with what they're doing to see if there's anything I can do to support them. So what I'm going to cover in this session is my background as a franchisor. I did have a franchise. I'll tell you a little bit more about why I no longer have a franchise later. I particularly want to talk about recruiting new franchisees because that's really where I started to go very wrong with my own franchise. I want to talk to you about your franchisees, training, coaching, and performance managing them. And I want to talk about the challenge when franchisees work in their business and not on it. I want to show franchisors why it's really important that you deal with poor performers and don't just let it slide. Really, really important. And I want to talk about the advanced stages of a franchise. Once you've got your franchisees through the steep learning curve, how they can, buy 2 franchises or 10 franchises. Yeah. So if you look at the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. So I was an personnel stroke HR manager, and I had the wonderful luxury of being able to work with self-managing teams in the early days. And the results we got were just staggering. So I was then headhunted to go to a computer company to work with their teams. And we didn't call them self-managing teams. We talked more about power teams. But once again, I just saw the amazing results that you could get where people actually understand how teams work. Yeah, and then of course what happened, and so I actually then decided that this is what I wanted to do. HR is a big portfolio and I just wanted to work with teams. So I set up my own business to do just that. And I did that for 30 years. And about the midway point, probably about 20 years in, I just got too busy. I literally was on a plane on a Monday morning, back home on a Friday afternoon, and my husband barely saw me. And also, I was getting so incredibly burnt out. And he was the one that said, now, my husband had a franchise, he had 32 franchisees. And so he was the one that said, you need to franchise your business. And of course, I'm thinking, I don't know how you do that. And he said, a franchise is simply a system. You have a system. So he helped me, we did all the legal work, we did all the manuals, and I franchised. And I sold 11 franchises in 18 months, and he was staggered. It had taken him years to sell 11 franchises. And I think he truly thought that I was going to be his retirement plan. But what was happening was, one by one, I watched them fall over. So if you look at the next slide, you'll find out why I was watching them fall over. So when I was on the franchise sector, when I was in the computer sector, the computer sector has a word, GIGO, which is garbage in and garbage out. And it's a horrible phrase. But my husband explained to me after he went through the same process with his fairly early franchisees that we don't know what we don't want in the terms of a franchisee. And so we tend to bring in, sorry, it's a horrible expression, we tend to bring in anybody that's got a check. And then, of course, we find out that they're totally unsuitable. And so, of course, I was an HA manager, so I was an expert recruiter. So I thought, but my mistake was I recruited trainers for my business. I'm not a trainer, I'm an HR person, but my system is a process of training modules. And so I recruited trainers. But of course, what they wanted to do was lovely people. Please don't get me wrong, they were lovely people, but they wanted to change everything. And it's like, no, because it works. I'm not saying down track you might not have a better model for that particular module, but right now you need to get out and build your business. And so, of course, I was like them. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I think I had about 7 franchisees left. One day, in sheer frustration, I wrote what I affectionately call my famous letter. And so I wrote my letter, and on the back it says things like, what a franchise is, what it isn't, what my role is, what it isn't, what your job is, what it isn't, all of those kind of things, what I am, what I'm not. And when I showed it to my husband, he said, I want 32 copies. And so that's when I realized that I wasn't alone in having these franchisee challenges. So I ask you the question, if you have franchisees that aren't performing or are bringing your name into disrepute or whatever, or are not following the system, how do you do your recruitment process? Because that's everything. All the rest falls into place if you recruit great people. When I work with franchisors or managers or owners, I always ask them about their people. Are they trainable? Are they coachable? Because if people aren't trainable and they aren't coachable, you don't want them. So if you look at the next slide, one of the things I realized as time went on with my own franchise was that I wasn't asking the right questions. Now, not that I would ever go back to franchising, I'm not the right person to do that. But when I'm working with a franchisor and they're looking to recruit people, I suggest these are the questions that they need to ask. Has the person ever managed staff? Because if you're building a franchise, you need staff. Do they have any marketing experience? You have to be able to market. Yes, the franchisor does their marketing, but you, the franchisee, have to do your own marketing. And that was a big shock for my people because I think they thought that that's what I would do. Yes, I do, but you have to do your own. Do they have a sales background? Because everything we do in a franchise, we've got to get out and sell. Do they have financial skills? Cash flow in any business is king. If your business is running out of money, then you're in trouble. Do they understand project managing? Because yes, when they first buy a franchise, they're on their own, but eventually they have to start to bring on people because otherwise they're trying to do everything themselves. And then, of course, if they haven't managed staff and they bring on people, then they don't know how to manage people doing things. Um, yeah, it's just not something they've ever done before. Do they understand dealing with disgruntled customers? And a biggie, do they understand themselves? I knew within probably about 2 years that I was the problem in my franchise. I'm a trained profiler. And just to explain what had happened with my franchise, I was actually down to my last 3 franchisees, and they were brilliant. All 3 of them would have made absolutely brilliant franchisees. But around that time, my mum in the UK, I'm in New Zealand, my mother got sick, and I was having to fly backwards. I'm an only child. I was having to fly backwards and forwards to look after my mum, to basically get her into a rest home. And then, of course, as she's deteriorated, to go through the process of burying my mum. And I had my last 3 franchisees. And while I was in the UK, the first one phoned me and said, look, I'm struggling. I don't have the network. He was a recent immigrant. I don't have the network. I've got 2 children and we're not eating. So he said, I need to get out. And I said, that's fine. I would never hold anyone to a contract. So he went. So now I had 2. A bit more time passed, and the second one, I was in the UK again, and he contacted me and he said, and he was doing really well. And he said, look, I'm working with a company at the moment, and they're so delighted with what I'm doing. They've asked me if I would like to become their in-house trainer, which was a bit of a shock because it was my material he was using. However, I said, okay, look, let me talk you through that. When there's a downturn in the economy, the first person that goes is the training manager. So I will honor if you want to leave and you want to take up this job. I do understand, you're used to a regular income, and with my business, you haven't got a regular income yet. But just bear in mind that you could be redundant, within a very short space of time. And lo and behold, and no delight in my part, within a year he was redundant. So it's all of those kind of things. Understand yourself. Oh, so just come back to, so my third franchisee, unfortunately, I discovered that she had been cheating me financially, and I literally closed her down. I would not have anyone doing that. So now I had none. I had no franchisees left. And my husband said, look, don't worry, it's normal. You know, they talk about 13 franchisees before you get it right. But I just lost my mum. I just cleaned up an estate. I just found out that I was being cheated. I wasn't in a really good space to then be thinking in terms of starting again. By coincidence, I went along to an evening on profiling your entrepreneurial style. So I do profiling, but mine is team profiling. This was about understanding my entrepreneurial style. And as soon as I took this test, I knew I'm not a franchisor, I'm a creator. I love creating new products, new books, new services, new ideas. That's my thing. And so I came home and gave my husband the bad news. I'm sorry, honey, I will not be reopening my franchise. So he went into a grief process because he really did think I was going to be his retirement plan. So anyway, so that's cool. So, also the big part of franchisees is they have to build a team. They absolutely have to have a support team. And if you have a team of people, you have to be able to delegate. And delegation is such an interesting, it's a webinar all on its own. So those are the questions you need to ask. So come back to your franchisees. When I was recruiting mine, I was very clear. I wanted them to tell me what their strengths and weaknesses were. I wanted to know what help they needed from me and where I could, like, was it marketing they need help they needed, sales need. And what I found was when the franchisees said, look, I need help with everything, I was happy with that. But I had one particular franchisee, and this is where I knew I was going to make a mistake, but I needed the money. You know what it's like. She said, I don't need help with anything. Thank you. I'm perfectly capable of running this myself. I should not have taken that person, but I did. Okay. And so, of course, with all of your franchisees, this be coachable is so important. Are you coachable? Will you take advice from me? I don't know everything. I'm learning still. However, I have built a franchise based on a system I've been using for 30 years. And so if I say to you, it's probably not a good idea to do that, please listen to me. And okay, franchisees have to build that strong team, the delegation thing. But a biggie is learn to outsource. You don't have to necessarily take on employees yourself. Learn to outsource. I still run my business with 6 people helping me. None of them work for me as employees. They're all sole traders in their own businesses. I outsource everything that I don't enjoy doing. So, that makes sense. So next slide. So last year I worked with a very large franchise, and I think there were about 45, maybe 50 franchises. And one of the questions I asked them, I spoke at their conference, and one of the questions I threw out during my presentation was, how often do you have one-on-ones with your franchisees? Oh, sorry, how often do you have one-on-ones with your staff in this particular case? But I was also asking the franchisor facing him, how often do you have one-on-ones with these 50 franchisees? And most of them gave me answers like daily. Nope, that's not a one-on-one. Weekly. Nope, that's not a one-on-one. A one-on-one is at least an hour once a month where you sit with the person and give them the coaching, give them the feedback, talk to them about their what next. That is a one-on-one. That is when you get the opportunity to say, these are the areas of your business that are working really well and well done. These are some areas that I think you need some more coaching. And I'm more than happy to coach you, but are you coachable? And when I'm working with a manager or an owner or a CEO, one of the questions I ask them about poor performing people is, are they savable? Your franchisees are no different. If you have a franchisee that you have done one-on-ones with, you had performance discussions with, and they're still not getting any better, The question is, are they savable? How much time are you going to put into a person where you know you're flogging a dead horse? One of the people I worked with last year, a franchisee, she, female, no disrespect, could have been a male, she had been trying to build her franchise for 8 years, and she could not manage staff. And hers was a business where she needed staff. I said to the franchisor, I think you've got to let her go, buy her out. And they didn't. And so another 8 years will pass and she still won't build a business. But it's the reputation that she's doing in that small area where her franchise is. She doesn't pay suppliers. She treats new staff like dirt. They last about 6 months and then they go. She's had 2 personal grievances taken against her. Why would you let that continue? And my question is, how long will you let that go on before you say enough? And I keep coming back to, what is your reputation in that area? And of course, the 80-20 principle, as we know, 80% of your franchisees will be fine. It's the 20% people that will take up 80% of your time. But a big question is, what is your exit strategy if a franchisee isn't working? You must have one. You cannot let this, like this lady, 8 years, you cannot let that person go on. Why would you do that? It just doesn't serve anybody, it's just madness. So, next slide. So what I did learn when I've worked with some of the big franchisees, big franchisors, is that some franchisees are amazing. And look, it won't be all of your franchisees. And this is where during your one-on-ones, when you've got one of your real go-getters, is to ask the question, what you want next? Are you thinking of buying a second franchise? Are you looking at building your territory? What's your growth strategy? And I have worked with some franchises where some franchisees actually have 2, 3, or even 4 territories. Now, that's a whole new level of challenge, if you like, because they absolutely have to have a team around them. What was really lovely was I was working with a particular franchisee who wanted to buy a second franchise in a different territory and was wondering how he could manage 2. And I had actually worked with the second franchise in their team. And I had profiled everybody in that team. And one of the people in that team had been taken on as a business development manager. And they hadn't profiled him. They'd just taken him on from reputation. And when I saw his profile, I thought, oh dear, this is not a business development profile. This is a customer service profile. And so I asked the then franchisee, how's he going with business development? He said, oh, he's not. We're really disappointed. I said, okay, let me tell you why. I went into the profile and I said, this is why you've taken on a customer service person, which at the time was a bit of a shock. But then when this other franchisee wanted to buy out the second franchisee, who was starting to have health challenges, I was able to say to the first franchisee, you've got the perfect office manager here in the team already. And so that's what they did, was they promoted this person who'd been taken on as a business advisor into office manager, and now he could run 2 franchises with this wonderful office manager. These are the possibilities if you do regular one-on-ones, if you profile your people, so the basics. A profile costs $97. Why wouldn't you profile your people before you take them on? It lets you know what challenges you're going to have before you even start. And the other thing also, when I was working with this very large franchise, I said, so where do you go for your new franchisees? And they went, oh, well, we advertise and this, that. I said, do you ever look within your admin support people? They went, oh, no, I never thought of that. You've got people there who already understand the business. They're already doing a good job. You know that they've got a great attitude. Why not look at having a process where people can grow into buying their own franchise? Fund it, send them off on courses and whatever. They're sitting there. You have talent in your teams. You know, you don't need to go out and get strangers who look good on the surface, and then when they come in, you find out you just made a guy go. Yeah, so next slide. We're nearly there. So before I franchised, you know, the big part of what I did when I was working with teams was I used to teach managers and owners what I called my 30% factor. And my 30% factor was simply this. I would say to an owner or a manager or a manager, how different would your results be if you could spend one day a week working on your business rather than in it? And for a lot of people, that's almost like I was asking them something in Swahili. My son was the first classic case. My son bought a business. He didn't know a lot about this business, but he's a quick learner and he's a hard worker. And so he was getting exhausted, and I sat him down and I explained my 30% factor. And I said, why don't you have Fridays off? My son is actually a professional golfer who decided to come off the whole circuit because he now had children. He said, I can't have Fridays off. I said, why? You own the business, you can have Fridays off. He went, what will people think? I said, does it matter what they think? Have you got a good office manager? Have you got a good factory manager? Oh yeah, no, I've got great people. I said, okay, well, you tell them, and it doesn't matter, it could be a Wednesday or a Tuesday or whatever, but on this particular day, I'm going to be out there looking for new business. Your new business would absolutely expand if one day a week you went to a golf course or whatever and offered to get a group of your suppliers or whatever together and take them out on a golf day. Do you think that might be a way to build your business rather than doing the old-fashioned, put it on, online, get into Facebook and LinkedIn and all of that? And it was like a door opened in his brain. And that's what he does. Now he runs a couple of golf tournaments, and his suppliers and his customers will come and he gets business out of it. You know, this stuff isn't rocket science. It's just we've been brought up to do business in a way, and we've always done it that way. And so when somebody says, have you thought of, people go, oh, you can't do that. Why can't you do that? Anyway, so in order to do that, of course, and my son was a classic example, you need to have good systems so that you're managing the results, not the people. So, I checked in with him and said, did you notice the results going down on a Friday? He went, no, actually, they went up. I said, yeah, that's because mostly people work better when the boss isn't around. And we just said, laugh about it. But it's so true, manage the systems, not necessarily the people. And of course, if you build a business like this, you can work from anywhere in the world. It all comes back to that recruitment. It's all starts with that. Yeah. And of course, I mean, the big one for me, of course, is build trust, but manage the measures. This lady with the 8 years didn't trust people. She just didn't trust people. She truly felt everyone was out to get her. And in the end, she still is, sabotaged her business. So next slide. So my summary is garbage in and garbage out. Absolutely everything depends on that first stage, which is recruitment. Spend more time recruiting, you'll need to spend less time training and managing. But in the initial stages of take someone on, you must train, coach, and mentor. Yes, it takes time, but the more time you put in the beginning stages, the less time you will have to put in down track with poor performance. Set up your good measures. Look in the mirror. Am I the problem? I was the problem in my franchise. I was not a franchisor. Yes, I could have brought people in. Yes, I could have kept going. I still had the system. I had I even had people waiting. So there we go, but it didn't bring me joy. And my belief is life's too short. If it doesn't bring you joy, don't do it. There's always another opportunity. Yeah. And of course, the big one for me has always been know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Come back to how much time is this person taking? Is it worth, are they savable? And of course, I love this one. If you can't change your people, change your people. Yeah, so my last slide. So my lovely letter that I wrote, and my husband said, I want 32 copies, I turned into a book. And it sells by the truckload. I have a business in the UK, had a business in the UK that used to buy 250 copies of the book a year, and they used it as their induction program. Now, I haven't heard from them since COVID, so not sure. I probably should get in touch and see what's going on. But yeah, it's the induction. It comes back to that, what my job is, what my role as your franchisor is, what it isn't, what I can do for you, what I can't, what I will be able to do for you, what I won't. The big one is I'm not your mum. In my case, I'm not your grandmother, and I'm absolutely not your banker. But the other big one in my book is I'm not your enemy. Your success is my success. I want you to succeed. Yeah. So that's my book. Now, I am more than happy to give you good rates. Everybody in your franchise should have a copy of that book. But also, I speak at conferences. This stuff I've given you this morning, I can run at a conference. We have lots of laughs, but it gives them some key messages, like, well, for a start, I can probably say things in a fun way that you, the franchisor, can't say. Or I can say things that you've been telling, because I've had managers say to me when I've said something, I've been telling them that for years. I said, yeah, but sometimes people just need to hear it from a different person. And sometimes they won't hear it from me. Sometimes they need to hear it 10 times before they'll hear it. But have a think about who in your franchise is chewing up your time, and who is giving you stress, and who is giving you sleepless nights. And do you want some help with performance managing them either in or out? Because this is my area of expertise. So that's me. I've given you my email details if you want any more information. More than happy to answer any questions. We will be putting this webinar up onto YouTube. It'll probably go up tomorrow. Show it to your franchisees. I don't mind. I'm happy to share my information. I just want you, the franchisor, not to end up like me, stressed to the max, and miserable. Don't do it. So have a good day. Take care.